She had exactly $43.16 left in the world. An eviction notice slipped under the door like a death sentence, and a little brother who still looked at her like she could fix anything. Then came the worst storm Harlem had ever seen, and with it, a knock. A drenched stranger holding his burning hot son in his arms. She should have kept that door locked. God knows she wanted to, but something made her open it anyway. What happened next is the kind of story people beg me to tell again and again. Because every single woman watching right now needs to hear how it ends. So do me a favor real quick. Hit that like button right now so this reaches every sister who's tired, broke, and still choosing kindness tonight. Let's get this to 1 million likes together. Drop, I needed this in the comments if you're still here with me. And don't you dare move. Because this one hits different. The night Zara Williams's world changed forever. She had exactly $43.16 to her name. The eviction notice had arrived that morning. A cold white rectangle slipped under her door like an assassin's blade. 3 days. That's all she had left before they would be thrown onto the street. 3 days to come up with $2,000 she didn't have. 3 days before another black woman and her brother became another statistic in Harlem. The rage burned in her throat as she crumpled the notice in her fist. She'd done everything right. Everything they said you were supposed to do to achieve that mythical American dream. Culinary school, graduating top of her class despite working 2 jobs. Opening her own restaurant, Roots. Pouring every cent she had into a place that celebrated both her black heritage and her passion for global flavors. For 2 beautiful years, it had thrived. People had lined up around the block for her jollof rice with a Carolina twist, her modernized soul food, her fusion dishes that told the story of the African diaspora. Then the landlord tripled the rent overnight. Just like that. No warning, no negotiation. Just another white man in an expensive suit deciding her dreams weren't worth as much as the luxury condos they planned to build. And when she'd protested, when she'd pointed to her perfect payment record and the value she brought to the neighborhood, he'd looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language, like her existence was an inconvenience to his profit margin. Now her restaurant was gone. Her savings were gone. Her credit was shot. And the culinary world that had once praised her unique vision wouldn't even return her calls for line cook positions. Too overqualified, they said, when they bothered to say anything at all. The unspoken truth hung in the air. She dared to rise above her station once, and they weren't about to let her try again. The tiny apartment she shared with Marcus was their last stand. 1 bedroom with Marcus taking the pull-out couch. The ceiling leaked when it rained. The hot water worked when it felt like it. But it was theirs. And now they were about to lose even that. That night, rain pounded against the windows like it was trying to break in. The old building groaned under the assault of the storm. Zara stood at the stove, stretching their last ingredients into something resembling dinner rice, a single chicken breast cut into small pieces, and the vegetables that were just this side of spoiling. Marcus sat at their rickety table, pretending to do homework, but really watching her with eyes too old for a 16-year-old. Eyes that had seen their parents' funeral at age 6. Eyes that had watched his sister sacrifice everything to keep them together. "We'll figure it out," he said. The same thing he always said when things got bad. Zara didn't answer. There was nothing to figure out. She called every friend, explored every option. No one had money to spare. The social services offices had wait lists months long. Their grandmother, who had raised them after their parents died, was now in a nursing home, fighting to recover from heart surgery, unable to help. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. The woman who had sacrificed everything to raise them now needed their help, and Zara was failing her too. The electricity flickered, threatening to plunge them into darkness. Another bill she couldn't pay. Another humiliation waiting to happen. Then came the knocking. 3 sharp raps on the door, almost lost in the thunder. Zara froze, spoon in midair. No one visited them, especially not at 9 p.m. during the worst storm of the year. It could be troubled drug dealers who operated in the building, or the landlord coming early to harass them about the rent. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. "Ignore it," Marcus whispered. but something pulled Zara toward the door. Call it instinct, call it foolishness, call it the last desperate hope that somehow salvation waited on the other side. Through the peephole, she saw them. A man, Asian, maybe in his late 30s or early 40s, wearing what had once been an impeccable suit, now soaked through. Beside him stood a small boy, no more than 8, his face flushed with fever, shivering violently despite the man's suit jacket draped over his shoulders. Every rational thought screamed at her to walk away. This wasn't her problem. She had enough troubles without inviting strangers into her home. They weren't even from the neighborhood. What were they doing here at this hour? But then the man looked directly at the peephole. His eyes filled with a desperation she recognized all too well. And the boy coughed, a wet, racking sound that spoke of illness taking hold. Zara had been raised by a woman who believed that turning away someone in need was the same as driving the nails into Christ's hands yourself. And despite everything the world had done to her, she couldn't quite shake that teaching. She opened the door, and her life changed forever. The man spoke broken, heavily accented English. Their car had broken down 6 blocks away. His phone was dead. The boy, his son, had developed a fever suddenly while they were driving back from a meeting. They had walked through the storm, looking for help, but everything was closed. He had seen her light on. The boy swayed on his feet, murmuring something in Korean. Without thinking, Zara reached out and placed her hand on his forehead. He was burning up. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "He needs to get warm and dry." Marcus's eyes widened in alarm as she ushered the strangers into their shabby apartment. The man bowed slightly, gratitude evident in his face. "Min-ho," he said, pointing to himself. "This June," he gestured to his son. Zara guided them to their tiny bathroom, handing them the only clean towels they had left, the good ones she'd been saving for job interviews. While they dried off, she rummaged through their meager medicine cabinet, finding the children's fever reducer she kept for emergencies. She returned to the kitchen, aware of Marcus's disapproving stare. "We don't have enough for ourselves," he whispered furiously. "And you're inviting strangers to stay?" The anger flashed through her. Not at Marcus, he was right to be cautious, but at a world that had forced them to think this way, to see kindness as a luxury they couldn't afford, to view other human beings in need as threats rather than people. "We're not turning away a sick child," she said firmly. "Not while I have a roof over my head. Not even if it's just for 3 more days." When Min-ho and June emerged from the bathroom, Zara had cleared her bed for them. The boy's fever wasn't breaking, and the storm had intensified, making it impossible for them to leave. Min-ho tried to protest, pointing to the couch instead, but Zara shook her head. He looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from watching your child suffer and feeling helpless to stop it. "My brother and I can share the couch," she insisted. "June needs to rest properly." She gave the boy the medicine, then went to the kitchen. Their nearly empty pantry stared back at her, a testament to how far she had fallen. But in the back, she found what she was looking for, the special ingredients she'd been saving. Gochujang paste, sesame oil, dried shiitake mushrooms. Remnants from happier days, when she'd been exploring Korean cuisine at her restaurant. With those precious ingredients and the last of their chicken and vegetables, she made a simple soup, a hybrid of Korean guk and the chicken soup her grandmother had made when she was sick. As the aroma filled their tiny apartment, she felt a strange sense of purpose return, the joy of cooking for someone who needed it. When she brought the soup to June, his eyes widened in recognition. He spoke excitedly to his father in Korean, the first energy he'd shown since arriving. He say, "Smells like home," Min-ho translated haltingly. "How you know Korean food?" "I'm a chef," Zara replied, the words catching in her throat. "I was a chef," she corrected herself. She watched as June ate hungrily, color returning to his face with each spoonful. Min-ho watched too, relief softening his stern features. For that brief moment, the crushing weight of her own problems lifted. She had helped this child. In a world that had taken everything from her, she could still give something to others. They slept fitfully. Zara and Marcus crammed onto the pull-out couch, while their guests took her room. Throughout the night, she checked on June, adjusting blankets, offering water, monitoring his fever. By morning, the worst had passed. The boy slept peacefully, his breathing even, his forehead cool to the touch. The storm had cleared too, sunlight streaming through their grimy windows like it was mocking yesterday's darkness. Minho received a call early. Apparently his driver had located them through some tracking app. Before leaving, he tried to thank her, his limited English failing to express what was evident in his eyes. "You save my son," he said simply. "I not forget." He pressed an envelope into her hand. When she tried to refuse, he shook his head firmly. "Please, for your kindness." After they left, Zara opened the envelope, expecting perhaps $100. A generous thank you from a grateful father. Inside was $5,000 in crisp $100 bills and a business card. Black, minimalist, with only a name and a phone number embossed in silver. Minho Park, CEO, Park Industries. A quick internet search shattered any remaining illusions. Minho Park wasn't just any businessman. He was the Minho Park, the tech giant who had revolutionized artificial intelligence. The CEO whose company was valued at over $70 billion. The Korean immigrant who had built an empire from nothing. And he had slept in her bed, eaten her food, and trusted her with his son's welfare. The money solved their immediate crisis, the rent was paid, the electricity remained on, food filled their pantry again. But Zara couldn't stop thinking about the strange night, about June's feverish face, about Minho's grateful eyes. 3 days later, a sleek black car pulled up outside their building. A woman in an impeccable suit introduced herself as Minho's personal assistant. Her boss wanted to speak with Zara. Would she come to his office in Manhattan? The rage bubbled up again, hot and familiar. Was this how rich men operated? Dropping into her life, throwing money at her, then summoning her like a servant? But curiosity won out. And really, what did she have to lose? The Park Industries headquarters occupied the top 15 floors of a gleaming midtown skyscraper. Zara felt the stairs as she was escorted through the lobby, her second-hand clothes, her braided hair, her dark skin making her conspicuously out of place among the sleek professionals. Minho's office was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Central Park that people paid millions to wake up to. He rose when she entered, looking nothing like the desperate father from the stormy night. In his tailored suit, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and power, he was transformed, imposing, authoritative, intimidating. But then June burst from a side door, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Soup lady!" he exclaimed in accented English, running to her and wrapping his arms around her waist. The ice broke. Minho smiled, a real smile that transformed his stern face. "My son has not been so excited since." He trailed off, pain flashing across his features. "Since his mother died last year." The proposal came next. Minho wanted to hire Zara as June's personal chef. The position included an apartment in the building where they lived, health insurance that would cover her grandmother's care, and a salary that made her culinary school dreams seem laughably modest. "Why me?" The question burned in her throat. "You don't know me. I could be anyone." Minho studied her for a long moment. "You opened your door in middle of night. You gave last food to strangers. You took care of my son when you had nothing." He gestured around his opulent office. "I meet many people who want something from me. You wanted nothing, just helped." Felt like a fairy tale, too good to be true. Rich white men had been promising her the world and snatching it away her entire life. Why would this rich Asian man be any different? "I need think about it," she said finally. Minho nodded, respecting her caution. "Of course, but June asks for your soup every day since that night." He has not asked for anything since his mother died. That night, Zara sat beside her grandmother's bed in the underfunded nursing home, explaining the bizarre turn of events. The old woman listened, her wise eyes taking in every detail. You're afraid, her grandmother said finally. Of course I'm afraid. The words erupted from some deep well of pain. People like us don't get offers like this without strings attached. What happens when he decides I'm not worth it anymore? When he gets tired of his charity project? We'll lose everything all over again. Her grandmother took her hand, her touch feather-light but somehow still strong. Baby girl, fear is the tax you pay on a life you haven't lived yet. Your mama and daddy didn't raise you to be afraid. I didn't raise you to be afraid. They're all dead, Zara whispered, the bitterness thick in her mouth, and their lack of fear didn't save them. No, her grandmother agreed, but it made their lives worth living. This rich man saw something in you that night, something special. Don't you dare tell the universe you're not worthy of receiving its gifts. A week later, Zara and Marcus moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings. Their new home was bigger than the restaurant she'd lost. The refrigerator came pre-stocked with ingredients she hadn't been able to afford in months. The arrangement was straightforward. She would prepare June's meals, teach him about food, and occasionally cook for Min-ho's business dinners. The rest of her time was her own. But nothing is ever that simple. June was a traumatized child. Since his mother's death in a plane crash the previous year, he had barely spoken, hardly eaten, and retreated into a world of silence. The parade of nannies and housekeepers had failed to reach him. His father, consumed by work and his own grief, didn't know how to help. The first week, June refused everything Zara cooked, despite his initial excitement. He sat at the table, silent and stubborn, pushing food around his plate until she took it away. The second week, she changed tactics. Instead of bringing him completed meals, she invited him into the kitchen. If you don't like my food, then help me make something you do like, she challenged. His small hands were clumsy with the vegetables, his cuts uneven, his measurements imprecise. But as they cooked together, something miraculous happened. He began to talk. First just simple instructions, more salt or not that pot. But soon whole sentences emerged. He told her about the Korean dishes his mother used to make. About how food had tasted different since she died. About how his father worked all the time now. By the end of the month, June was eating everything she prepared. By the end of the second month, he was running to the kitchen the moment he got home from school, eager to help with dinner preparations. Min-ho noticed the change. How could he not? His silent, withdrawn son was laughing again, chattering about recipes and ingredients, proudly serving dishes he had helped create. But Min-ho himself remained a mystery. He worked 16-hour days, often returning to the apartment long after June was asleep. When he was home, he was unfailingly polite to Zara, but distant. The desperate father from the stormy night seemed to have vanished, replaced by a businessman who saw her as just another employee. Until the night she overheard him crying. She had stayed late, preparing ingredients for the next day. As she was leaving, she heard it, the muffled sound of sobs coming from Min-ho's study. The door was slightly ajar, offering a glimpse of the powerful CEO hunched over his desk, shoulders shaking, a photograph clutched in his hands. She should have left. This wasn't her business, wasn't her place. But something pulled her forward, the same instinct that had made her open her door that stormy night. "Mr. Park," she said softly. He straightened immediately, wiping his eyes, trying to recover his composure. But it was too late, she had seen beneath the armor. "I apologize," he said stiffly. "I did not know you were still here." "Don't apologize for grieving your wife," she replied, the words coming unbidden. His eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in suspicion. "June told you about his mother? Children see everything. They understand more than we think." Min-ho looked down at the photograph, a beautiful Korean woman holding a younger June, both of them beaming at the camera. "Today is anniversary," he said finally, "of the crash." Zara nodded, understanding flooding her. June was quieter today. He didn't want to cook. "I should have remembered. Should have been home earlier." The The self-recrimination in his voice was unmistakable. Instead, I had meetings. Always meetings. You're doing your best, Zara said gently. No. Minho's voice hardened. I am failing him, like I failed his mother. The story spilled out then. How he had been too busy to join his wife on that fateful trip. How she had called him from the airport, asking one last time if he would come. How he had promised to make it up to her when she returned. How the plane had gone down over the Pacific an hour later. June was supposed to go with her, he said, his voice hollow. School project kept him home. I almost lost them both. Zara understood loss. Understood the guilt that came with surviving. Understood the crushing weight of responsibility that followed. My parents died in a car accident when I was 12, she found herself saying. My brother was 6. We were supposed to be with them, but I had the flu. Marcus stayed home to keep me company. Our grandmother raised us after. Minho looked at her with new eyes, seeing her, truly seeing her, perhaps for the first time. Not as the woman from the storm, not as his son's chef, but as someone who had walked a similar path of loss and responsibility. How do you? He gestured vaguely, struggling for the English words. How do you carry it? One day at a time, she answered honestly. Some days better than others. That night changed something between them. The wall of employer and employee began to crumble, revealing two wounded people doing their best to rebuild their lives from tragedy. Minho started coming home earlier. Just 30 minutes at first, then an hour, eventually restructuring his entire schedule to be present for dinner with June most nights. He began asking Zara about her culinary background, about the restaurant she'd lost, about her dreams before life had derailed them. She learned about him too, how he had grown up poor in rural Korea, the son of a factory worker, how he had taught himself coding, winning a scholarship to MIT, how he had built Park Industries from nothing, fighting prejudice and xenophobia every step of the way. They call me cold, he told her one night after June had gone to bed. Ruthless, the Ice Emperor. He smiled without humor. Better than what they called me at beginning, when they thought I would fail. Zara understood that too, how the world assigned labels based on race, on origin, on appearance. How they expected failure and resented success. My restaurant critics called my food surprisingly sophisticated, she said, as if they expected primitive dishes from a black woman chef. Their shared experiences bridged gaps of culture and class, creating something neither had expected, friendship, and gradually something more. The first time Minho touched her, really touched her, not the accidental brushes that had become more frequent, was during a cooking lesson she was giving June. The boy had mastered knife skills beyond his years, carefully julienning carrots for the dinner they were preparing. Like this, Dad, June called excitedly. Watch what Zara taught me. Minho came to stand behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Show me, he said, his voice low near her ear. She demonstrated the technique, hyper-aware of his presence, of his breath on her neck. Then his hand covered hers on the knife, his chest pressed against her back as he mimicked the motion. Like this? He asked. Yes, she managed, her voice betraying her. Exactly like that. The tension between them grew with each passing day. Lingering glances across the dinner table. Conversations that stretched late into the night after June was asleep. His hand on the small of her back as he guided her through doors. Her pulse quickening whenever he entered a room. But Zara wasn't naive. She knew the gulf that separated them, not just race and culture, but worlds of wealth and power. She was his employee. He was one of the richest men in the world. She had seen enough movies to know how these stories usually ended for women like her. And she had Marcus and her grandmother to think about. The new school her brother attended, the improved care facility where her grandmother was finally receiving proper treatment, all dependent on this job. So she maintained boundaries, kept things professional despite the electricity that crackled between them, reminded herself that fairy tales weren't written for black girls from Harlem. Until the night everything changed. Minho had invited her to attend a charity gala, not as staff, but as his guest. His reasoning was practical. June had grown so attached to her that he refused to be left with a babysitter. The boy would be happier if Zara came along. She wore a borrowed dress, feeling like an imposter among the glittering elite. Old money and new tech wealth mingled in the grand ballroom, eyebrows raising as Minho introduced her to business associates and socialites. "This is Zara Williams," he said simply, offering no explanation for her presence at his side. She felt the stares, heard the whispers. The assumptions were evident in their eyes. What else would a young black woman be doing with a wealthy Asian man except the obvious? The rage she had carried so long burned hot in her chest. These people knew nothing about her, her skills, her struggles, her strength. Yet they had judged and condemned her with a glance. Minho sensed her tension. "Ignore them," he murmured. "They talk about me too. Behind my back, they still call me foreign upstart. Interloper. At least they let you in the door," she replied, more bitterly than she intended. His eyes darkened. "You think I don't know? I fought for years to be in this room. Still fighting." Before she could respond, a tall, silver-haired Caucasian man approached, his smile not reaching his cold eyes. "Minho, finally gracing us with your presence," he said, his gaze sliding dismissively over Zara. "And you brought entertainment." The ballroom seemed to freeze. June, who had been standing beside them, looked up in confusion. Minho's response was immediate and devastating. "Robert," still confusing rudeness with wit. His voice carried just far enough to be heard by nearby guests. "Ms. Williams is a celebrated chef who once owned one of the most innovative restaurants in Harlem. She is also responsible for my son's well-being. I suggest you apologize for your ignorant remark." The man flushed dark red. "I meant no offense." "You did." Minho cut him off. "But I'm willing to overlook it. This time." The threat behind those final words was unmistakable. Later, as they drove home, June asleep between them in the back of the limousine, Zara finally asked the question that had been burning inside her. "Why did you defend me like that? You could have just let it go. Those are your peers." Minho looked at her, his gaze intense in the dim light. "Those are not my peers. They are business contacts. Nothing more." He paused. "And I defend what is important to me. I'm your son's chef," she said quietly. "No." His hand found hers in the darkness. "You are much more than that. To June. To me." That night, after June was tucked into bed, Minho kissed her for the first time. Not the tentative kiss she might have expected, but confident, certain. A man who knew exactly what he wanted and wasn't afraid to claim it. Her mind screamed caution. Her body betrayed her, responding to his touch with a hunger she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. "This complicates everything," she whispered against his mouth. "Life is complicated," he replied. "Doesn't mean we shouldn't live it." For 3 perfect months, they existed in a bubble of newfound happiness. June thrived with both of them in his life. Minho delegated more work, making time for family dinners and weekend outings. Zara began sketching plans for a new restaurant, a dream Minho encouraged, offering to invest. Then reality intruded as it always did. Minho's mother arrived from Korea for an unexpected visit. Mrs. Park was a formidable woman, tiny in stature but enormous in presence. Her disapproval was immediate and unvarnished. "This is why you ignore family business?" she demanded in Korean, which June later translated for Zara. "For this woman? Have you forgotten your position? Your responsibility to our family name?" The arguments raged for days, always in Korean, always when they thought Zara couldn't hear. But she saw the toll they took on Minho, the tension in his shoulders, the weariness in his eyes. "Your mother hates me," she said finally. "She thinks I'm not good enough for you." "My mother lost her husband young," he replied carefully. "Had to raise me alone. Sacrificed everything. She is protective." "She's racist," Zara corrected bluntly. Minho didn't deny it. "She is from different time." different culture. And what about you? The question she'd been afraid to ask. Am I just a phase? An exotic adventure before you settle down with someone appropriate? The hurt in his eyes was answer enough, but he put it into words anyway. You think so little of me? After everything. I think the world doesn't make it easy for people like us, she replied. I think there are forces pulling us apart that have nothing to do with how we feel. The next blow came from an unexpected direction. A business rival, Robert Chun, the same man from the charity gala, launched a hostile takeover attempt of Park Industries. Rumors spread through financial circles that Min-ho had lost his edge, that he was distracted by a new relationship, that the Ice Emperor had melted. The media caught wind of their relationship. Tabloids ran photos of them together, headlines speculating about the mysterious black woman who had ensnared one of the world's most eligible bachelors. Online comments turned ugly, vicious, attacking both of them from all sides. Min-ho retreated into work, fighting to save his company. 16-hour days became 20. He stopped coming home for dinner, stopped calling when he'd be late. June began asking when his father would return, his old insecurities resurfacing. Zara watched it all happening, powerless to stop the unraveling. She had seen this movie before, knew how it ended for women like her. The final straw came when Chen's people approached Marcus at his new school, offering him money for information about his sister's relationship with Min-ho, her 16-year-old brother, targeted because of her choices. That night, when Min-ho finally returned home, she was waiting. We need to talk, she said. He looked exhausted, defeated in a way she'd never seen before. Can it wait? I've had longest day. No, can't wait. Because I'm leaving. That got his attention. What? This isn't working. The words felt like glass in her throat. Your mother hates me. Your business is suffering because of me. My brother is being targeted. June is confused and hurting. These are temporary problems, Min-ho argued. Chun is desperate. My mother will return to Korea. We can get through this. At what cost? Zara demanded. Your company? Your reputation? You've worked too hard to lose everything over this. This? He echoed, his voice dangerously quiet. This is us. You, me, June, family. The word hit her like a physical blow. Family. The thing she had lost at 12 and been trying to rebuild ever since. I'm trying to protect you, she said, her voice breaking. All of you. I don't need protection. Min-ho stepped closer, taking her hands. I need you. But fear, that old companion, had taken hold. Fear of causing more damage. Fear of not being enough. Fear of having happiness snatched away again. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm sorry. She packed that night, deaf to Min-ho's arguments, to June's tears, to her own breaking heart. Marcus helped silently, understanding her reasons even if he didn't agree. They moved into a small apartment in Queens, nothing like the Harlem place, but clean and safe. Min-ho had insisted on providing a severance package that ensured her grandmother's continued care. Pride almost made her refuse, but love for her grandmother won out. Weeks passed. Zara found work at a hotel restaurant, a not executive chef, but at least in a kitchen again. Marcus adjusted to another new school. Life resumed its familiar rhythms, but the color had leached out of everything. June called every day at first, begging her to come back. Then every other day. Then weekly. His voice grew more distant with each call, the betrayal setting in. Another woman who had left him. Min-ho never called. She told herself it was better this way. Clean break. Then June got sick again. The call came from his school. High fever, just like that stormy night months ago. They couldn't reach Min-ho, who was in emergency meetings fighting Chen's latest takeover maneuver. Zara was still listed as June's emergency contact. She didn't hesitate. Some bonds transcend contracts, transcend breakups, transcend fear. When she arrived at the school, June clung to her like he was drowning. You came back, he mumbled through his fever. I knew you would. She took him home, not to her apartment in Queens, but to the Manhattan penthouse that had briefly been her home too. The staff welcomed her with obvious relief, updating her on Minho's absence, on June's deteriorating condition over the past weeks. "He stops eating again," the housekeeper whispered. "After you left. Mr. Park tries, but—" Zara settled June into bed, made the same soup from that first night, and sat beside him as he drifted to sleep. The fever was higher this time, more dangerous. She called Minho's private number, but it went to voicemail. Called his assistant, who promised to get him the message. Hours passed. June's fever worsened. By midnight, she was genuinely frightened, considering taking him to the emergency room. Then the front door burst open. Minho stood there, tie askew, face haggard, eyes wild with fear. "June?" he asked, voice raw. "Sleeping. The fever's high. I was about to take him to the hospital." Minho crossed to his son's bedroom in long strides, dropping to his knees beside the bed. The tenderness with which he touched June's forehead, checked his pulse, straightened his blankets. It broke something inside Zara. This was love. Pure, unconditional love. The kind that transcended culture and class and circumstance. The kind she had walked away from out of fear. Minho looked up, meeting her gaze. "You came when he needed you." "Of course I did. I love him." The simplicity of the confession hung in the air between them. "And me?" Minho asked, voice barely audible. "Did you love me too?" Past tense. As if it were already finished, already lost. "I never stopped," she admitted. "That's why I left." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You left to protect me, my company, my reputation." She nodded, throat too tight for words. "I lost the company anyway," he said simply. "What?" Shock jolted through her. "This morning Chun succeeded. Park Industries is no longer mine." He spoke without emotion, stating facts. Board voted to accept his offer. "Too much instability," they said. "Minho, I'm so sorry." "I'm not." He rose, coming to stand before her. "Company was my life for 15 years. All I thought about. Cost me my wife. Almost cost me my son." He took her hands, just as he had the night she left. "I don't want that life anymore. But everything you built, I can build again." The certainty in his voice was absolute. Different this time. Better priorities. June stirred, mumbling in his sleep. They both turned to him, united in their concern. "Stay tonight," Minho said. "Please." For June. She stayed that night, and the next. June's fever broke, but she couldn't break away again. On the third day, Minho showed her the plans. A new venture, smaller, focused on ethical AI applications for public good. And beside it, blueprints for a restaurant. Her restaurant. "I had these drawn up after you left," he explained. "Thought maybe someday you would come back." The restaurant was everything she had dreamed of, but better. A fusion place celebrating both Korean and African American cuisines. Traditional techniques meeting modern sensibilities. A culinary bridge between their worlds. "Why?" she asked. "After I walked away?" "Because I believe in your talent," he said. "Because I wanted part of you to stay, even if you couldn't." It wasn't the grand, dramatic reunion of fairy tales. There was no magic solution to the problems that had driven them apart. Minho's mother still disapproved. The world still raised eyebrows at their relationship. Cultural differences still required patience and understanding from both sides. But they were stronger now, tested by fire and found worthy. 6 months later, Roots and Soul opened its doors in Harlem, not in the gentrified section, but in the heart of the community Zara had always called home. The staff came from both Korea and the neighborhood, trained in 2 culinary traditions that found beautiful harmony on the plate. Minho moved the headquarters of his new company, Park Ethical Technologies, to a building nearby. June started at a local school, thriving with friends from all backgrounds. Marcus discovered a talent for coding that Minho personally mentored, and her grandmother, strong enough to leave the nursing home, presided over Sunday family dinners like the queen she had always been. On opening night, as the restaurant hummed with delighted guests, Minho took Zara's hand and led her to the rooftop garden they had built above the kitchen. "I have something to ask you," he said. The small box in his hand made his question obvious. The ring inside, a simple band holding a stone that shifted colors in the light, was nothing like the ostentatious diamonds she had imagined a billionaire would choose. "It's a black opal," he explained. "Like that night, darkness with unexpected fire inside. The night you opened your door and changed everything. I was so angry back then," she confessed. "So full of pain and resentment. I opened that door almost against my will. And now?" he asked, holding the ring between them. She looked around at the garden, vegetables and herbs from two continents growing side by side. Looked down at the restaurant where two cultures had found harmony. Thought of June, who now had two parents who adored him. Of Marcus, thriving with new opportunities. Of her grandmother, finally receiving the care she deserved after a lifetime of giving. "Now I understand what my grandmother always said," she replied, offering her hand. "Kindness is never wasted, even when it seems foolish. Even when it seems dangerous." Opening that door was the first truly brave thing I'd done in years. As Minho slipped the ring onto her finger, the multicolored stone catching the last rays of sunlight, Zara felt the final pieces of her armor fall away. The anger that had protected her for so long had served its purpose. It had kept her fighting when surrender seemed easier. It had fueled her determination when despair threatened to overwhelm her. But she didn't need it anymore. Not with this man who saw her strength and her vulnerability and cherished both equally. Not with this unlikely family they had built across boundaries of race, culture, and circumstance. One act of kindness on a stormy night had changed everything. She had opened her door to strangers, not knowing they would become her home.